Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com, where you'll find links to everything, including the podcast, all the social media feeds, and live simulcasts, as well as, of course, the audio-only live stream. And live around the world, around the state of Alaska, our world, on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. It is the Michael Dukes Show, Thursday edition of the show. And we're slowly, I can see it's getting darker. It's getting darker, man. I hate that. You know, it's not like, I don't mind it for sleeping, but boy, when you wake up and it's still dark and it's just, got to do what we got to do, I guess. This is just how we do it. Another summer is slowly fading away here on this 22nd of August. We have now gone through the primary election, and we're still going to do a little bit of a post-mortem on that today. Give you some ideas and some thoughts on where things are going. Some interesting statistics are coming out about this primary, and I think it's indicative of. I don't think it's any one thing. I think there's a combination of things here going on. And I'm going to try and read the tea leaves a little bit here today, give you my thoughts on where I think it's, where I think it's going and what it's going to look like come election season. So it could be a whole different world come election season, that's for sure. So we're going to talk about that here, and we'll see where things go this morning. There you go. We're also going to. I've opened up the phone lines today because I have no guess. In fact, I have not heard back from the campaign of Lieutenant Governor Nancy Dahlstrom. I sent an email, and there's a little bit of a snafu on an email that I sent on Friday, but I resent the email on Monday night. And I still have not heard back. So I don't know if that's auspicious or not. Not quite sure. Not quite sure what's going on. But I definitely wanted to have the Lieutenant Governor on to ask her the burning question that's on everybody's mind. Will she drop out of the race? You know, will she drop out? That's a good question. At this point, I don't know. It's hard to predict. I have a feeling that she doesn't want to drop out, but there is a component of pressure that may come from the Republican National Committee, the Congressional Committee, the RNCC, which is the group that originally picked her and has been pouring money into her campaign. It was interesting to note that she was not mentioned in their press release on the results that came out here at the after the primary. They didn't say anything, which was, I think, a bit of an unusual turn, since they have been very vocal from the beginning. And as it turned out, I mean, they were the ones that were, kind of funding it and pushing it forward. So I think that it's going to be definitely an interesting, well, we knew that already. It's going to be an interesting election season. And we could be remaking some new pathways as this could have ramifications beyond just the current elections. This could have ramifications into the future, especially for Dahlstrom. There was there's an article in Must Read that we'll talk about here that basically said it's Nancy Dahlstrom's choice, activists say, drop now or she'll destroy her political future. Which I think there is a real possibility that if she does not listen, and it's pretty clear what's going on, that potentially could have ramifications for her in the future. And so it's going to be interesting. But as I was saying, phone lines are open right now at 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. And the question is today to you, the listeners, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is in the case of, well, not just Nancy Dahlstrom, but I mean, we talked about House District 9, right? That's the one in Girdwood where there's 3 Republicans. And between those 3 Republicans, they've got enough to overcome the Democrat. The Democrat is the one that is now currently in the lead with 40% of the vote, and then the remaining 60% is essentially broken up between the 3 Republicans fairly equally. They basically all have about 20%. So, and that's just one race. We were talking about some yesterday, and I'm sure we're going to continue to go through some of the different races because we didn't finish from yesterday. But I mean, the question then becomes, do you support the idea of having the candidates, especially candidates from the same party, drop out of the race before we get to the ranked choice voting component of it? I mean, kind of a self-selecting primary, if you know what I mean, or self-reinforcing primary. Because, again, this is working pretty much as intended. There's only one race where Democrats are really running against each other in a serious way. And yet we've got race after race after race where Republicans are kind of, shooting at each other and will be in the general election. So the question is, should Nancy Dahlstrom and others who are running behind in the various races step out of the way for their colleagues who are ahead in the primary? Is that politically correct enough? Should the losers on the ticket get out? That's the question. Should the losers on the tickets get out? And I'm not calling them losers. I'm talking about people who are down ballot, right? Who are at the bottom. If you've got a race with one person on the left and 2 people on the right, should the person who's lowest on the right, should they bow out? Now, it's everybody's choice, right? I mean, it's a candidate's choice. I'm not saying that they should be forced, but in your opinion, if you were talking to them over a cup of coffee, would you say, you really should just back out? That's the question. Bill in the chat room just said, I'm really beginning to think that this is all rigged, barring a couple of exceptions. Well, I think that this just shows, again, how ranked choice voting is working as intended. As I said yesterday, ranked choice voting on paper is a great idea. It really is. I mean, if you look at it in a vacuum, Oh, you get this side, you get that side, but it doesn't take into account the political philosophies of the parties involved. Where you've got one side that's very communal, very kumbaya, anything for the cause, will all come together to give the world a Coke and sing in peace and harmony. And on the other side, you got a bunch of wild, rugged individualists who don't play well with others, who just want to be left alone, who've lived a whole life of you can't tell me what to do, and who don't see, for the good of the many is not tattooed on their, on their forehead, for the common good kind of thing. They believe that it's more an individual expression. So it doesn't take into account those philosophies. But when they started pushing ranked choice voting, I guarantee you that the people who were pushing it understood it. They understood that they had a tighter control on their candidates because, look, there's no secret here. The people who have pushed ranked choice voting are from the progressive side, or even not even, that may not be a fair label because it's the bigger government side of the equation, the pro-big government. Because ideally it was pushed to help keep Murkowski in office, who is, although she's got an R next to her name, I mean, again, but they understood that those on the left have much better control of their party and of their people, of their party members than do the Republicans. I mean, that's because the Republicans, they don't control anything. They can't even figure out that when party members break their own rules that they stop giving them money or stop endorsing them. They still just like blithely, whatever you want to do, go ahead. Right? So they understood that from the beginning, that the philosophies, the political philosophies of the people involved would have a big effect on this. And so it's, it's interesting. Now, we can fix this. We can fix it if we can repeal it. That's great. But we can work within the system. But again, this comes back to that same personal philosophy aspect. We talked about this last go around in 2022. We said, okay, we're not happy with the ranked choice voting system. We don't like it. It can be confusing. I don't feel like it's fair. I don't feel like it's a one person, one vote situation. But if you're going to do it, at least rank the red, right? That's what they, at least. And yet, because we didn't, it's like, here's what I felt like. Watching people respond to this in a variety of forums, on Facebook, in person, on the radio, everything else. I felt like a lot of people who I thought were, intelligent, thoughtful people were just in some ways acting like kids. They were walking around with their fingers in the ears going, la, 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 I can't hear you. La, 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 I can't hear you. Because when we told them, okay, we don't like ranked choice, I understand, but at least rank the red, they'd go, no, I'm just voting for my one. That's it. Not going to do it. Not going to give in to I'm just going to go vote for my one. Congratulations. You just help other people to win because you did. I know it sucks, man, but you use the tools you got. I mean, you use the tools you've got. It's a tough process. I don't like it any more than you, but guess what? Last go around, I voted for 3 people. I refuse to rank Mary Peltola. I would not do it. So I ranked Chris By and Nick Begich and then Sarah Palin. That's what I did. So I ranked the yellow and the red because the Libertarian was up at the top. But I had a chance to do it, so why not? If the election was held today and it was the presidential election, I guess, I don't know, Chase Oliver, maybe RFK Jr., then Trump, and I'm definitely not voting for Kamala. But I will use the system that's in front of me to best effect. I mean, I will not vote for the person that I don't believe in, and even if that means I only rank 2 or 3. But you use the system that's in effect. If I go back to the national or to the general election, and Nancy Dahlstrom's still on the ticket, she will get my vote. It may just be down at the bottom somewhere. But we can avoid that if people like Nancy, people in these multiple person races, decide that it's not about them. It's about the overall picture. That's where it makes sense. So, your thoughts on this? 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. Do you believe that makes sense? Or, and I'm not saying force people out or anything else, but do you believe that that's the right thing to do? And if not, why? Question mark? Love to hear it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Good morning, my pretties, and your little dogs too. How you guys doing? How's it hanging? How's it going this morning? Oof, I had a hard time waking up this morning. I don't know what the deal, if it's the dark, if it's the thing. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm here to go. I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat room here, and I want to talk about it. Rob Myers, I see you're in there. Rob Myers says ranked choice voting is problematic, but we can deal with it. It's the jungle primary, not the open primary. That's the problem. Rob, if you got time, why don't you call my cell phone? Since we don't have any other guests today, why don't you call my cell phone and we'll discuss that? I think that's an interesting thought, and I want to expand on that. So if you have time, you can call my cell phone this morning, and we'll just do it over the phone if you have time to do that. I'd love to have that conversation, because I think you are right in a way, but again, the problem is that it's a philosophical problem. I mean, I agree with you, especially about the jungle primary, but that ranked choice voting is problematic to me is kind of an understatement based on the philosophies that the various sides of the parties hold. I think that's an interesting thing. David Boyle said the ranked choice voting folks at last week's AMAC meeting could not clearly explain ranked choice voting. Terrible explanation. I was confused after that. I mean, that's part of the problem, is that it's confusing. And then again, it's, the pick one, the primary, it is confusing. Most people, look, we've been a nation of basically one person, one vote for 240 years. And then they want to change things up. Rick says, Michael, do you have a number for Nancy Dahlstrom we could call to voice our opinion? Well, I don't have a number for Nancy Dahlstrom. You could send emails to her campaign. You could do like David Boyle did. I see that David Boyle was quoted in Must Read. He posted up on Facebook and tagged Governor Mike Dunleavy in the post. Dear Governor Mike Dunleavy, please ask Dahlstrom to pull out and remove your endorsement. I mean, I think that, you could do that. I do not have a number to call, though. All I have is a person from the campaign that reached out to me via email. So I don't have anything like that. That is the thing. Fat Ray over on YouTube said, these people refusing to drop out are screwing the state. They have their own goals and interests above the people's and should be run out of politics. But this is human nature, Fat Ray. This is, Ray, look, that we all know that people have, in most cases, have their own interests above other people's. That's just how we are built. I care about myself and my family more than I care about anybody else. I will always put them first. Now, politicians have a tendency to put themselves before everything else because they believe that they know, they've got the answers to make it all work out for everybody. But yeah, this is not, again, rocket surgery here. We saw that coming. I'm going back here. Going back. Oh, tonight is the thing on mail-in ballots at the borough elections. All right, Fairbanks, I'll see you at the borough building at tonight at 5:30 to stand up to the mail-in only borough election nonsense, says Shelley. And that may be what Barbara wants to talk about. Barbara's on the phone right now. Good morning. So I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling through all the comments here. Brian, hey Brian, is the Rona any better? He's feeling marginally better. He says he's feeling marginally better. Amy's she's eating my chocolate virtual donuts. She's going to save me one with sprinkles. That's super sweet. Super sweet. I think the virtual donuts are great, but I think I may need a real donut this morning. I'm feeling that, I'm feeling that for sure. All right. That's it. We're up against it. Let's get to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do this thing.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Yep, the one with the show. That would be me. Good morning and welcome back. Hour one of this beautiful Thursday continues. We're taking your phone calls at 319-527-3864. And Barbara is on the line. Let's see what she has to say this morning about what's going on out there. Good morning, Barbara. What's on your mind?
Good morning. And I just thought I'd call in under my, as a private citizen, and alert people to, once again, the consideration of the mail-in voting resolution before the assembly this evening. And gosh, it would be really great if people could call in under Citizens Comments A and express their sentiments about mail-in voting. What the resolution does is it calls for a committee formed by the borough clerk to bring forward mail-in voting. So I don't care if the clerks get together and meet and have sandwiches or whatever. But I do think that having a conclusion of going to mail-in voting is the wrong direction. And I don't think the borough government should be telling the city governments what their borough clerks will be doing. I think, the polite way to do this and the proper way to do it would be to have the city councils consider the matter and then bring it forward. But be that as it may, whether that's another process piece, but I don't think mail-in voting is a direction that our borough would really like to go toward. And I think it's worth defending our current system of government. Right now, we have voting at the polls, early voting, absentee voting in person, absentee voting by mail, absentee voting by email. I don't know how much more easier we can make it. My problem with mailing ballots out to everybody on the voter rolls is that in Fairbanks, we have a large turnover in population due to the university and the military. We have 2 good-sized military bases,
Right.
and they rotate out every 2 years. So our roles are really bloated.
Yeah, no, Fairbanks has got one of the
It's a
higher
real-
rotation rates of any, the rotation rate of people, like 10 or 12% of the people move in and 10 or 12% of the people move out every year. So it's it can be over the course of 4 or 5 years. That's a pretty significant number that the people that could be left on the voter rolls if they registered to vote while they're there. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you pull those
Absolutely.
out.
Because if you change over your driver's license, you're on the voter rolls, whether you intended to or not. And I know in the case with one of my kids, he moved out of state. He voted in the other state. He was still on our voter rolls here for another 5 years after that. So that was just, they don't clean up very well. They don't clean up easily. And I really hope that people turn out and really express their opinion and sentiments on this. The other thing to keep in mind is, I think to me, the biggest piece is the lack of ballot security in mail-in voting. That ballot will be going all over the place. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't even know if the person it was mailed to voted it. In contrast with ballot voting at the polls or early voting, the security is there. You go in, the ballot is in the hands of the voter. It goes directly into the hands of the division of the borough clerk or the division of elections, the state election. And so there's a much tighter chain of security with that ballot.
Right.
So it's really a very, very big deal. I would also like to note that the author of the resolution, Savannah Fletcher, tends to do exceedingly well with absentee ballots. And so I think she thinks it's to her advantage to move to a mail-in voting system. So this is something that is pretty much unique to her. And obviously, you always want to do what is to your advantage. But I just really see a chain of custody issue there with mail-in ballots versus the absentee.
No,
So
I mean, I agree.
where
I
I'm
think it's from a security issue, from a ballot security issue. It worries me. We saw this when I was shocked when I first came into Anchorage and they first started doing ballot, the mail-in ballots and everything. I was going to the post office to pick up some mail for the station or whatever, and how they have those tables they have those tables
Right.
in the post office buildings where you're sorting your mail and throwing your junk mail away and everything else. And there's always some loose junk mail, flyers, whatever around. Well, there was 2 or 3 ballots sitting out on these tables that hadn't been thrown away, where people had a post office box, and apparently somebody had the post office box before them, and there was a mail-in ballot there. And I'm just like,
Yep.
it's a security issue. Now, maybe nobody's going to forge the proper signature and it'll get caught at the signature line or what, but it's very uncomfortable for me because I think that the balloting system and the voting system is kind of a cornerstone of what we need to do here, that the security of those ballots is important. And if somebody's out there collecting these loose ballots all over the place and they can figure out, how to utilize them, that's a problem. We should not be offering that opportunity up.
Yeah, I just think there's all kind of opportunities for nefarious activity, intended or unintended. So I just think that this is where we fight. If you have a telephone, 907-459-1401, you can call in, sign up to testify either telephonically or in person. The borough clerk's office will give you a number when you call in, and just sign up to testify. They will call you, or if you're in the chambers, they'll call your name. You can step up to the podium to give your testimony. You can email assembly, ASSEMBLY, @fnsb.gov will get you all of the assembly members. So again, if you fought for nothing else, this is where we fight. This is where the fight is going to be at. Is to preserve our system of voting and our way of deciding things in this borough. They're going to sit there and tell you how Anchorage has got it all so spiffy and whatnot. They actually spend more money on mail-in voting in Anchorage than we spend here at the polls. They spend as much again on mail-in voting and the postage, the printing, and all that we spend for the entire election up here.
Right.
Crazy.
All right.
And if you go back to May 7th, we had an election at the polls on the tax. GVA at the same time was doing vote by mail on the bylaws. Now, I'll grant you, bylaws are not a sexy issue, okay? Kind of, but they only had 11% turnout, and they actually had two fairly contested races on the ballot, but they only got 11% turnout. We had 23% turnout with voting at the polls.
Right, for a special election,
turnout
right?
Is much better.
I agree with you, Barbara. So tonight, 5:30, the Borough Assembly Building, and again, you can call 459-1401 to get signed up or to testify, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Barbara, for bringing this out. I appreciate it, and appreciate you coming on board as a private citizen.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's continue ahead. I got another line on hold. Feel free to call in this morning. We're just having chats. 319-527-3864. Carlene is down in the Emerald Isle, Kodiak. Good morning, Carlene. What's on your mind this morning?
Election integrity. On the Tony Perkins show last night, it's called Washington Watch. He's in Washington, D.C., and it's called the Family Research Council.org or .com. They had the discussion, two topics also. Congressman Don Estes from Kansas was on being interviewed, and they revised the numbers. They've added 818,000 fewer jobs than they previously reported. That job growth is not what they said. They overstated by 68,000 jobs a month. The economy is struggling, and it's tough for Americans. They're trying to make people think that it's better than it is, and the facts are completely different. But on the election integrity, there was an attorney, retired attorney, Michael Angeletta, and it's their efforts to secure the Idaho elections, one person, one vote. And it's Proposition 1 about ranked choice voting. And then they discussed Alaska, that what was going there was large, complex, and expensive, and that he discussed Don Young's seat, that the Republicans of Alaska are 60%, and yet a Democrat got the seat. And Jody Heights, who was filling in for Tony Perkins, said that he was a very good friend of Don Young's, and Don Young would be rolling over in his grave. And they discussed that 15% of our ballots were discarded. That was 15,000 to 20,000 ballots discarded. And that they're expecting dark money to be rolling in to educate the people of Idaho from groups like Fair Vote, 30 Fund, United America.
Oh yeah, no, there'll be tons of dark money floating in there for sure, because this is all working as intended. Again, they got the whole ballot measure and the ranked choice voting passed in Alaska, and then you saw them immediately start holding up Alaska as the shining beacon on the hill for where people should go and what people should do. It was the cheap date to begin with. Once they get it set up here, then they started moving out into other places, and that's what they want. They want this ranked choice voting across the entire country. I think that, again, problematic, confusing. It makes people distrust the voting system, which, whether it's true or not, again, I'm not saying that it's true or not, but the perception is that people don't feel one vote. So it's creating some of that distrust, and we can't have that, Carlene.
I agree, Michael.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in this morning. As always, it's great to hear from you. Appreciate you coming on board and joining us this morning. That brings us right up to the break. So let's get to it. It also leaves the phone lines open. So what do you think? Do you think that Nancy Dahlstrom or people like her in some of these other races should drop out if they are not the top winner for their party? Should they continue to duke it out? That's the question. The Michael Duke Show continues, and there's some parallels here to things that I experienced in Fairbanks. We'll talk about that here on the other side. 319-527-3864. The Michael Duke Show.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America Live every morning on Facebook Live and... Okay, what do you got? What are we doing? Haven't heard back from Rob yet. I actually sent him a message. Rob may have just popped into the chat room long enough to make that comment and then pull back. But I mean, I would love to talk to Rob about his previous comment just to get into it a little bit deeper. Here's where he said the ranked choice voting is problematic, but we can deal with it. It's the jungle primary, not open primary. That's the problem. And I wanted to get some further thoughts from him on that. But, ranked choice voting is problematic. There's no two ways about it. I totally agree with that. But we could work with it within our current system if we had to. Now, again, today is the day. Rob says he's working on getting on the road this morning, so he doesn't want to talk to me on the phone because he's got a job. Dang it. I totally lost my train of thought there. That totally threw me there for a second. We could utilize again the ranked choice voting. We could work within the system, but again, there's too many people out there who are so mad about it that they're just, again, la, 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 la. I'm just going to vote for my one and I'll be done. And that's a problem. Oh, I was going to say that today is the day. Today is the day that the ranked choice voting is appearing in court. So today's the day of it's in this Superior Court, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes from here. We can only hope that the courts allow it to come on it and be part of it. All right. Why can I not? I don't know. Facebook's being stupid. I'm looking for. Rob posted a link for something he was trying to work on, and now I can't look at it. I don't know why. Let me see if I can look at it over here. Because I think he outlined some of his thoughts on that. He sent me a link because he's busy trying to get stuff done. So let me see if I can actually launch this from another window. Oh, GCI is struggling this morning, folks. They are struggling. Trying to make it all happen here. Come on. Oof. It's taking forever. There we go. Let's see if we can get this
Rob was kind enough to actually paste it out for me here. All right. This November, there'll be a ballot measure to repeal ranked choice voting in the jungle primary. The jungle primary, which we used this week, is different from an open primary, has the top 4 candidates advance to the general election regardless of the party affiliation. It was created on the theory that political parties shouldn't control who gets on the ballot, especially in the fiercely independent state of Alaska. But here's the problem. In the absence of parties, who does control who has access to the ballot? And from a practical standpoint, it means that the people with the heft to get past the primary and have a shot at winning at the general election will be those with money, either their own or others, or other name recognition. If you want to reduce the power of money in politics, vote to repeal the jungle primary. It's true. And I can definitely see that as a point, Rob. So thank you for pointing that out. I think that's a good point right there for sure. All right, let me go back to the comments in the chat room. Let's see what's going on here. Yes, Nancy. Yes, Nancy, drop out. Yes, Nancy, drop out. You can ask me, isn't that the point? Isn't that the point? Distrust in the system? Right? When I was saying that one of the reasons why I think that the mail-in balloting and ranked choice voting and everything else, that it's causing a bit of it's causing people to distrust the efficacy and the security of the voting system. It doesn't fly with the whole one person, one vote thought. And so it makes them distrust it, whether the perception is true or not, it makes them distrust the system. And that's part of the problem. And Brian says, well, isn't that the point? Isn't that the point? No, I mean, you could be right. You could be right, Brian. Maybe that is the point. Nancy needs to drop out. Yes. All right, we gotta go here. The Michael Duke Show.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Some mixed messages here. Not mixed messages, I guess. Some different points of view from the chat room this morning, which, by the way, if you want to participate in the chat room, it's just one more way to participate with the show. If you don't want to call in, if you don't want to send an email, you can always go over to Facebook, facebook.com/MichaelDukeshow/live, and get involved in the conversation there on Facebook or on YouTube or on Rumble. Most of the people here saying, yes, Nancy needs to drop out. But again, the question was larger than just Nancy Dahlstrom. I would think that that's the most high profile, the most high visibility case of what we're talking about here, because we saw what happened. We have Mary Peltola because we had 2 large Republican candidates in the last election. And that's how we ended up with Mary Peltola, because because the bickering got so bad on the right side of the spectrum that she was able to play towards the middle, pretend to be more moderate than she was, and drag all those middle and moderate people who may have just been frustrated with the bickering and the back and forth on the Republican side. And they, and then of course the rest of it was the votes were split up between the 2 candidates. So it just made it that much harder for any one of the other candidates to create a plurality. And so we know that's the most high visibility example of what we have here. Now, there are other cases. Cindy says, I would support the other candidate dropping out if our sitting Senator Bjorkman, where she's talking about Jesse Bjorkman down on the peninsula, was actually a practicing Republican. but he continues to side and vote with the Democrats. Now, again, I'm not talking about candidates where there's essentially only 2 Republicans in the race, or even a case where there's 2 Democrats in the race. If there was a race where there was 2 Democrats and a Republican, and the Democrats were splitting their votes, I would recommend to one of the Democrats to bow out. If you really want to have your team, your party win the seat, that just makes the most sense. Now, if it's a seat where there's only one party, be the Democrats or Republicans, let them duke it out. Let them duke it out. And in the case that Cindy was talking about here in the chat room, there's, that race is actually a pretty dang close race when it's all said and done. I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling backwards here because it was so we've got 43% for Jesse Bjorkman, almost 44%, and basically 42% for Ben Carpenter. So that is within a pretty close margin. The turnout in that race was pretty darn good, 17.5% turnout in that district. Some districts were low. I mean, overall, this was, and we're going to get into some of the numbers here in the next hour, but it looks like this may have been one of the lowest voter turnout primaries, ever. But certain districts did very well. We're going to talk about those districts as well. But in District D, Senate District D, down on the peninsula, Ben Carpenter and Jesse Bjorkman were pretty close to each other, definitely within a margin of error of some kind. As I mentioned earlier, Andy Cizik, who is the AIP candidate, the Alaska Independence Party candidate, who I would consider that to be more conservative than any other part. If he decided to pull out and throw his endorsement behind Ben Carpenter, there's enough percentage. There's 2.6% there. I mean, that could have pushed Ben over there. This is going to be a close race. The Democrat, they're never going to drop out, right? Because you got to have one side or the other. But this is going to be a fight between those two for sure. And so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. So I understand what you're saying there, Cindy. And that's why I said early on, I'm not talking about forcing people to leave the race, but in situations where obviously it makes sense and that the only path forward is for somebody on your side of the aisle to win would be for you to step aside, then that makes sense. Why wouldn't you, it's an interesting situation. Anyway, want to hear what you guys have to say. Too many windows open here. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. Randy says, I think Nancy Dahlstrom will step aside because I think she will place Alaska's future ahead of her own immediate personal aspirations. My impression from listening to her on a radio show a few times is that she is a sensible and decent person. I mean, she seems like a nice lady. I've never spoken to her, but I have seen a couple of interviews and, seen some of the things. She seems like a nice lady. I'm sure she is. But the question is she making the decision on this? She came forward on this with a full push and support of the Republican National Congressional Committee. And she was their candidate. So is she listening, are they saying pull back, or is she saying, at some point you have to do what's good for the state. And is duking it out in a big, spending millions of dollars between now and the election day beating each other up. Does this help anything? And this reminds me, as I said earlier, this reminds me of what happened, what I saw in Fairbanks. Now, in Fairbanks, for the borough assembly races, for those of you who aren't in Fairbanks, they're nonpartisan races, right? They have it's not a party affiliation thing or anything else. So they really, there's no primary. And it is at large, meaning the district, even though they say, House or, Assembly District D or whatever, it doesn't matter that because you can vote at large. They're basically just assigned that seat, but anybody can vote for any seat, et cetera, et cetera. So what we saw in a lot of those races was we saw people who had similar philosophies. Now, whether they had an R next to their name or Alaska Independence Party or a Libertarian, or whether they had a progressive or a Green Party or whatever, it didn't matter but we've seen where there have been multiple races in the past where the candidates have a similar philosophy. Maybe they have a slight disagreement on some specific point of rule or law or whatever. But we've seen it time and time again where the folks who are on the more left side of the spectrum will have one candidate in those seats, and then we'll have three other candidates that are basically obviously from the conservative side. And those three candidates for the entire election cycle will be beating the hell out of each other and basically beating each other down to tell everybody how they're better than these other two conservative, instead of being able to focus and fight against the one person whose philosophy really differs from theirs. Instead, they're focusing on the people who have slight differences from theirs. And I mean, I've talked to some of these candidates at the time and said, "What, guys, why don't we pull out? Why don't one of you pull out and support the other ones, or two of you, and then just have it be a head-to-head race? And then you wouldn't have to waste money fighting each other and then, bedraggling across the finish line. Why would you do that?" And that's what this ranked choice voting has kind of led to. The same kind of thing, the open primaries and then this general battle it out. The only people that lose in this are the ones with multiple candidates of a similar philosophy in the same race. They're the ones that lose. It's a crazy, crazy thing. All right, we got more numbers from the primary coming up. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Okay. Brian said, "I had 2 bubbles to fill in. I made it through one, then needed a cup of coffee." Oh, man. It's so hard, isn't it, sometimes? Ray says over on YouTube, he says, "My impression of listening to her," Nancy Dahlstrom, "on Problem Corner is she's going to stay in this to the end. Consequences be damned." It's possible. It's very possible. That was her written statement on election night, that essentially she was in it to win it. Michael says, "Yeah, well, you can't fix stupid, Dukes, and apparently you can't vote it out either." The only thing Nancy will help is to keep everyone fighting over the car keys while the Democrats hop in, take off, and drive the car off the cliff. I mean, that's the thing. We have to work together. Right? we have to work together in this regard. We can't just be the rugged individualist till the end. We've got to kumbaya a little bit on this, because it's just such a self-defeating thing. Again, it's the Republican thing, is circle the wagons, everyone point inward, now fire. I mean, that's where we're at. Exactly. Tyler just said that. I'm sorry, Tyler, I just almost repeated what you said verbatim there. Republicans are doing what Republicans do: circle the wagons and shoot at each other. I'm convinced it's all planned at this point. Well, maybe. I mean, maybe. It's insane. It's insane that's where we are. If you must read last night, there's an ongoing effort to pressure Dahlstrom to leave or imperil her political future. Yes, I agree. We're going to talk about that story here in just a minute. That's what's, go see. Go to Dahlstrom's page and check out the comments and comment yourself, says Rick. Wow. You mean her Facebook page? Is that what you're talking about? Let me go over here and see if Dahlstrom. All right, let me see if there's let me see what her page is saying. Oh my God, the internet this morning is so slow. Oh, here's her she actually posted this yesterday. On to November. Here's my latest statement. From day one, this campaign has been about defeating Mary Peltola in November. Tonight's results show my message of standing up to Alaska's energy interests, securing the border, and fighting back against the anti-Alaska policies of the Biden-Harris administration is resonating with voters across the state. I was endorsed by President Trump, Governor Dunleavy, and Republican leaders in Alaska and Washington because I'm the only candidate in this race who can beat Mary Peltola, and that's exactly what we're going to do in November. I'm sorry, Nancy, but math says differently. Math says something completely different. What do the comments say? It's time to step down. Please step down, drop out. Maybe schedule a lunch to discuss your tactics. Do the math, Nancy. Do you really believe you'll flip 90% of the people who voted for Nick? Please drop out. Oh, there's one good for you. You don't stand a chance defeating Mary. If you care about Alaska at all, you'll do the right thing. Bye-bye, Nancy. If you truly want to beat Peltola, then drop out as you came in behind Nick. Do the right thing. Drop out of the race. You should drop out of the race. This is Nancy. You lost. Do the right thing. Oh, it's brutal. Ooh, why are you campaigning so hard for Mary Peltola? Oh, this guy says it all. This is exactly how ranked choice voting works. Divide the Republican vote and the commie bastards win. America is doomed. Yeah. It's just, this whole thing is, yeah. Oh man, the comments in here. Yet you trailed Nick, and not by a little. You need to encourage your supporters to rank only Republicans in November. That's the only way to beat Peltola. The bottom line is that if the Republicans if she doesn't drop out and the Republicans continue the la and don't rank the red, that's exactly what's going to happen. That is exactly what is going to happen. 100%. 100%. Thank you for the heads up on that, Rick. I appreciate it. Appreciate you doing that. All right. Overwhelmingly positive. Yes, that overwhelmingly positive messaging that she's receiving from the people on her own Facebook page. Ow. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Hour 2 is right now. Let's do it.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. How are you? Thank you for coming in and joining us on this Thursday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live around the state of Alaska and around the world as well. Phone lines are open today, 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864 if you would like to if you'd like to be heard and sound off. The question that we were asking earlier is, in certain races, especially where there's races where there are multiple candidates from a party, and be it Democrat or Republican, where it is making it mathematically impossible for a single candidate to win in a one-vote election. Now, I have to clarify that, because we were talking about this during the break. And look, if we could get people to actually rank the red, then there is a possibility still mathematically for Nick, or I guess Nancy possibly, to win. But based on the numbers we're seeing right now, it would be a Nick win, because he's ahead by 7 points or whatever. The problem is, as I said earlier, is so many people on the right, so many people who are conservatives or Republicans or independents or whatever you want to call yourself, are so mad about ranked choice voting that they just la, you can't tell me what to do. I'm just going to vote for one and I'll be done. They didn't get the rank the red message, right? Which is what we tried to do last year. I mean, I had people who were bragging to me about, I only voted for one. Why? I don't like the system any more than you did, but I ranked every candidate that I could swallow. Like, if I thought unless I didn't rank Mary Peltola, but I ranked Chris By, the Libertarian, I ranked Nick Begich, and I ranked Sarah Palin. I mean, I did it. I used it. I used the system I was given. Right? I mean, that's what you have to do. Again, the problem is that people are so agitated by the whole system that they shoot themselves in the foot, and, they get an exhausted ballot with a single vote. If Nancy is still in the race at the end of, when we get to November, if Nancy is still in the race, I will be voting Nick Begich, Nancy Peltola, and then the fourth guy. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head right now, but the one guy who is a Republican but voted for Peltola last time but was disappointed. It's weird. But I'll still vote for him, and I won't rank Peltola because I can't get behind her. But I will rank the other three. If that works, then great. We were talking about whether or not she'll bow out, and somebody pointed me over to her Facebook page, where yesterday she posted, "On to November, here's my latest statement." This is from Nancy Dahlstrom's Facebook page. "From day one, this campaign has been about defeating Mary Peltola in November. As I said yesterday, if that's truly your point, you would you would bow out of the race. There's just, if that was truly what you wanted, if that was really what you were focused on, you would pull out of the race. She continues, tonight's results show my message of standing up for Alaska's energy interests, securing the border, and fighting back against the anti-Alaska policies of the Biden-Harris administration, that it's resonating with voters across the state. With a 20%, that's what it shows? It's resonating? I was endorsed by President Trump, Governor Dunleavy, and Republican leaders in Alaska and Washington because I'm the only candidate in the race who can beat Mary Peltola. Again, except for the math. 20% does not beat 50%. I don't care where you come from. Quite honestly, Nick was at 27, you were at 20. That's 47%. It still doesn't beat the 50. She said, I'm the only candidate in the race who can beat Mary Peltola, and that's exactly what we're going to do in November. Now, the comments from her post a day ago, I just scrolled through them all during the break. Out of the 131 current comments that are on this post, out of the 131 comments, there are 3 that say yay. There are 128 comments that tell her to get out of the race. So somehow I don't really think that you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. I don't think that Alaskans are getting your message. I don't think your message is resonating with the voters of the state. By the way, what do you really stand for? I mean, this whole my message of standing up for Alaska's energy interests. What does that mean? Securing the border. Okay. And fighting back against the anti-Alaskan policies of the Biden-Harris administration. What do you really stand for, Nancy? Nobody really seems to know. I mean, nobody really seems to know. Stop splitting the vote. These are just some of the comments, Do the math, Nancy. Do you really believe you'll flip 90% of the people who voted for Nick? And it just goes on and on and on. Do the right thing. Drop out of the race. I mean, this whole thing is just, it's frustrating. Must Read Alaska put out an article yesterday saying it's Nancy Dahlstrom's choice, activists say. Drop now or she'll destroy her political future. There's mounting pressure from across the state, and it's unavoidable the day after the primary. The grassroots is building into a rebellion against Nancy Dahlstrom, who came in a distant third for the race for Congress. People on social media are now tagging Governor Dunleavy with messages to stop endorsing Dahlstrom to get her and to get her on board with Nick Begich, or to get on board the governor to get on board with Nick Begich. She goes on to make some other points. All of the women's clubs but one endorsed Nick Begich. The one that didn't endorse him is the one that Dahlstrom is a member of, but even that club, her own club, has not endorsed her. All Alaska Young Republican clubs endorsed Nick. 40% of the Republican district committee's leaders have endorsed Nick. There's no grassroots entity in Alaska that has endorsed Dahlstrom because she is not a grassroots local candidate. She was picked by Mitch McConnell and Mike Lee and the members of the RNCC. That's who picked her because they don't want a disruptor like Nick Begich to go down to Washington, D.C. They want somebody who's going to play ball. They want somebody who's going to continue to go along to get along with the business as usual. I mean, one activist in Kenai said Nancy has no choice. She can drop out and begin to build her candidacy for governor, or she could stay in the race and destroy her entire political future. Now, Must Read has learned that there is an unprecedented level of activity at the Republican district level yesterday as activists take their next step to try and get Dahlstrom to drop before the September 2nd deadline. Apparently, there's resolutions being passed and letters are being written and meetings are being held amongst Republicans as they do not want a repeat of what happened in 2022 when the two leading Republicans, Sarah Palin, Nick Begich, ended up splitting the energy, resources, and enthusiasm for one candidate going to the general. This is the other thing. There's only so much money, right, in these races. There's only so much money available to run in these races. Now, Nancy's a girl. Mary Peltola has no problem on that front. She's sitting on $2 million in excess money. I mean, she's got more money than God in this race because the Democrats are pouring it in on her because they don't want to lose this one seat. But there's only so much money available out there when you're splitting it between two candidates. What sense does that make? That's another continual problem. There's a finite amount of resources that people can pull together. Now, as I said, if we rank the red, this may not be as big an issue, but it's still so frustrating and confusing. I just don't see why you wouldn't just bow out gracefully. And as this other person said, begin to build your candidacy for governor. If that's what you want, build your candidacy for governor and move on. But it's just, man. Salisbury, that's the other guy's name. Salisbury. He's the fourth candidate who is just, again, kind of a weird. The whole thing is just a weird deal. I've just got nothing on this whole thing. So Peltola is leading with a 50% vote. Nick Begich at 27, Nancy Dahlstrom at 20, and Matthew Salisbury with a fraction of a percentage here. But this voter turnout in this last election really, is a bit disappointing. Overall, it's about 16%, which is lower than 2016 when 17% came out. It's been 24 years since an Alaska primary election did not have a U.S. Senate race, a governor's race, or a ballot initiative on there, so that may have depressed the voter turnout. I think people, again, were confused. Either they understand it completely or they're confused on the ranked choice voting thing. If they understood it completely, most of them have been like, well, my race, those candidates are all going to be there in the general anyway, so why bother to vote? Maybe they do understand it. I don't know. But maybe there's just not anything else in there. Now there's going to be a presidential bump because there's always a bump for a presidential election that will go up, but there's no real way to predict that right now. Interestingly enough, conventional wisdom in Alaska political circles is that more Republicans vote in primaries than Democrats, and that more progressives turn out for general elections. Now, if that's the case, that's going to be interesting because according to one of the data guys from Ship Creek Group, which is a progressive firm out there, a higher proportion of Democrats and nonpartisan voted early or by mail in the primary than in prior elections. So somebody's a little motivated on that. His assumption is that more Democratic participants in the primary overall than expected is what happened. So they are getting motivated. They are getting out there, which again just reminds me of nothing else that we need to get out there and make sure that we're getting everybody around us to vote, to go out there and remember that even if you miss the primary, that it's time to move on to the general and start voting. And this is where the rubber is going to meet the road. If you want to sound off on this, I mean, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Do you think Nancy Dahlstrom or any other candidate, because there's several races out there where there are a couple Republicans duking it out against each other, and that a Democrat could then slip in because the Republicans are duking it out with each other. Do you think that they should step down? Do you think that maybe the lowest vote holder in those races should step down? or not. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. Kyle in the chat room, his final comments before we go to break here. He says, if the R's simply rank the red at 100% rate, an R could possibly win. The problem is that half of the R's are so damn stubborn that they won't even rank her number 2 out of spite. Again, it's the la syndrome. I don't like it, so I'm just going to do what I do. Meanwhile, the Democrats are more than happy to use the system against you. Good job. Good job. All right, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got one line on hold. We're going to be right back to that caller here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, let's go over to the phone call real quick. We'll get a name here. I see they're calling from somewhere up in Manly. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Dan Larson, and I'm calling from Fairbanks.
All right, Dan, hold the line here. You'll be number 1 when we return to the radio. You'll be number 1 with a bullet. So we'll get started here. So hold on the line, Dan. We'll be right back to you. All right, let me go back up here and see. I'm sorry, I'm going up here. Nancy is delusional, and so is the governor. If he doesn't drop Nick, his goose will be cooked. He also will be governor that killed the PFD. Good luck on becoming senator. If he doesn't, I think if he dropped Nancy, right? Instead of Nick. Has Nancy ever come out to support Rank the Red? And then Cindy, I noticed earlier, she said, I'm growing weary and well-doing. Don't do that, Cindy. Don't grow weary and well-doing. Just don't do that. What does she even stand for? David said, I've been wondering that for months. Even during her stump speech during the Alaska Republican Party's SEC meeting, I heard zero substance from her. I mean, I haven't either. And again, I was asking earlier this week or late last week, what does she stand for? What is her key piece of legislation? Now, Kyle pointed out that she did some work on some criminal justice stuff and everything else, and that's why she got tapped for the commissioner of the Department of. But you can't really, again, certain people are going to certain specifically because they're passionate about it. And I just think that she is not an exciting candidate. Let's put it that way. Is that, if Republicans would just learn ranked choice voting, then this would be a non-issue. We can deal with the voting system later. That's what I'm saying. And then I saw Ray said something about I'm scrolling. The chat room is jittering back and forth for me. So I was Brittany, wait a second. Brittany says, was there anyone else that was completely unaware that it was voting day, or was it just Kodiak? I was looking for it, but there were so many people here that said they had no idea it was election day for the primary. Do you think they don't advertise it on purpose? Brittany, I don't know. We were talking about, all day Tuesday, I mentioned it a dozen times that it was voting day. And we were talking about it leading up to it, to Tuesday, to get out right now and vote early. You don't have to wait for election day. You can vote early. Charlie points out to the problem of mathematics here, where he said, if we don't improve voter turnout, ranking will not produce a win for ours. They only had 45 to 46%. And again, that's got to be a higher percentage. Ray says, why should anyone reward Nancy with a second choice vote? She's either unable to see the bigger picture or doesn't care. Either way, she's unfit. I would argue, Ray, that anybody who doesn't put her as a second choice is also unable to see the bigger picture. Counterpoint. That, right? That is, I'm not rewarding her. It's almost like a protectionist or a protest vote just to block Mary Peltola from jumping in there and hitting the skids. That's what it's all about at that point. So I'm just saying. Okay. Where are we at here? We got a few seconds here. If Nick had placed third, David says, if Nick had placed third, he would be out already. She is putting her own ego above what is good for the state. It's clear she's not going to win, and she's in it for herself. I don't care that she was endorsed by Trump, and I love that man. Okay, well, again, like you said, I agree. If Nick had come in third, then it would have been, you're right. This would be a non-issue at that point. All right, we got to go. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Let's do this thing, shall we? All right. Here we go.
Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, welcome back. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense, Liberty-Based, Free-Thinking Radio. We got one line on hold right now. We're going to jump on over there. Dan is up in Fairbanks. He wanted to sound off this morning. Let's get his take on what's going on. Good morning, Dan. What's on your mind?
Well, I just don't understand how come Republicans can't figure out that they got to get organized. And, even if Donald Trump would win, he could be the best quarterback in the NFL, and if you don't give him a team, he ain't going to win a game. And you got to give him the Senate and the House. And on this ranked choice voting, why don't they just amend that to the guy who gets the most votes gets all the votes? Instead of ranking them 1, 2, and 3, whoever comes out one gets them all. And that way nobody has to drop out.
Well, that's an interesting thought, but how would that, you mean from one party? So if you had two Republicans and two Democrats?
From one party. One party.
So whoever got the most would then immediately assume the other, would immediately assume the percentages of the next person in line?
Yeah, he'd get all the votes, like 1, 2, 3. And in that party, however they were ranked, the number one guy would get the 2 and 3 guys' votes. And then that way you could throw a kink in the Democrats' plan.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know. I guess maybe that is a version of ranked choice voting that I'm not aware of. That would definitely be interesting. But again, it would come back to, so I guess what you were saying is people would just get to vote for one, and then whoever was the top vote getter would then assume all the other votes from the other candidates in their own party, essentially.
Yeah, or you could rank them 1, 2, and 3, and however it come out, like you say, one guy got 46 or 47%, and one guy got 20, and the other guy only got a percentage. And in that party, you would get all those votes, and then it would just be you against the Democrat candidate.
What would you say to people who didn't? Let's just say that.
I don't know, that's just the thought I had.
Well, let's game that out for a second. What if, in your example of the first guy getting 40% and the second guy getting 20 and the last guy getting a fraction, what if the people who voted for the second guy don't like the first guy at all? And they feel disenfranchised because they didn't want their vote to go.
Chips fall.
Well, but again, this is why I think ranked choice voting is so flawed. Because if you're going to have a runoff, which is essentially what they're saying this is, they're saying that ranked choice voting is an instant runoff. If you're going to have a runoff, you should still have one person, one vote. And if I don't want to vote for that guy, I shouldn't have to vote for that guy. Right? I mean, that's the whole point.
Well, yeah, that's true. But then, that's the primary. And then in the general, then, any office, you should really only have two people running for that office, because otherwise it's a rigged deal. There's no way the Republicans are going to win.
Right. Well, I mean, it could win if there was, first of all, a larger turnout. But even if the percentages held very close, if all the Republican candidates, if they rank the red, and all the Republicans were ranked in that race, it could be close. I mean, they could win mathematically. It's within the margin of error. It could win, but you would have to rank the red. You would have to rank every candidate that you possibly could. And even if Nick, for example, was at the bottom of your list, at least when every other thing was exhausted, you'd have a vote there, and maybe it could possibly happen. But yeah, I mean,
well, that's just the thought I had. I mean, there's got to be some way to get I don't even call them Democrats anymore. I call them commie-crats.
Okay. Well, and here's the other part of the problem.
Anyway, that was just a thought I had, so I thought I'd,
Dan, I think you're right. Here's the thing. Before you go, let me just say this, because you made the commie-crat comment. The problem is that when you've got a bunch of Republicans in a race like this, or two or three Republicans and only one Democrat, because the Democrat doesn't have to play to their base, and they're really the only choice for anybody who's going to vote by party, they're going to vote for the D no matter what. They can now play, which is what Mary did in the last election. They can now play more towards the middle. They can play more towards the moderate policies. They can say that they're more in the middle, and they draw some of those independent or non-declared voters who are in the middle towards her because they can do it. So that also is part of the problem. You're 100% right in that. So she doesn't show up as a more progressive or communistic, as you're saying, candidate because she doesn't have to play that. She can play towards her more moderate views or pretend to be more moderate at that regard. So, all right, Dan, well, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate your thoughts today.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864 is the number if you would like to if you'd like to sound off. I'd love to hear what you have to say here this morning. So how was the voter turnout? Well, again, not great. Not great. But which districts are the most engaged? Which districts had the highest turnout? Interesting to see. The one with the highest turnout was District 9 in Anchorage. That's the Girdwood one. That's the one where there's the 3 Republicans and the one Democrat, which is I'm sorry, I'm scrolling down to it so that I make sure that I don't butcher all the names again. So you've got Lee Ellis, Lucy Bauer, and Brandy Pennington on the Republican side, and you've got Kai Holland, who is a undeclared, nonpartisan candidate. Although my understanding is that they align with the Democrats. So, I mean, your mileage may vary. But again, Kai Holland, 40%, and then 20% for the other 3 candidates. But they had a 25.5% voter turnout. Pretty significant. House District 35, again, another one of those hotly contested districts in House District 35. They had a 23.8% turnout, and that's the one between Ashley Carrick, the Democrat, and Reuben McNeil. That's the race in Fairbanks. Now, Ashley came out with 60% of the vote versus the 40% from Reuben. So that's a tough race. He's going to need a lot of help to make that happen. House District 6 in the Kenai, of course, is the one down in Homer with Sarah Vance and company. 23% voter turnout there. North Juneau and downtown Juneau take 4th and 5th place. with 21.37 and 21.3% respectively. Then you got House District 16 with a 21% voter turnout. And that race is going to be between Nick Moe and Carolyn Hall. But again, a pretty significant turnout. And then the big one is, of course, the House District 34 race, which goes out across a huge swath. And that's the one between Mike Cronk and Savannah Fletcher and that's the one between Rebecca Schwanke and Cole Snodgrass and everybody else. 20% there as well. District 8 had a 20%. District 36 had just over 20%. And District 11 had 19%. Now, the lowest one was the District 18 Government Hill, and that's the Cliff Grove David Nelson race at 4.95%. So we'll see. Total state turnout, 15.31% voter turnout. Not great. Not great at all. The last low one was 17%, so we're down over a full percentage point at this point. Let's go over to the phones and continue on to see what you guys have to say. Should Nancy drop out? Should anybody who's in that position drop out? That's the question. Let's see who's on the line. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning. Willie Keppel out here in Quinhagak.
Good morning, Willie. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, first off, I think Nancy should just drop out just like the old type of primary. You know, you either win or you lose in the primary. It's great that everybody gets involved and runs. That's what primaries are for. But to do the best for the people means there should be a few rules that you still adhere to. Just because the Democrats managed to change the rules doesn't mean you have to play by them. And I've sent emails to Nancy's office, the governor's office, asking the governor to drop his support of Nancy and put his support behind Nick yesterday. And even bothered to call the governor's office to pass a message that way. So that's the first part I had. Nancy, thank you for participating, but now step aside and let's go win this race, you know. Out here, we had only 11% show up, but it was the only place in the state where there was 3 Democrats running. Apparently, the Democratic committee couldn't control the other 2 Democrats out here. So it was me with the Veterans Party and 3 Democrats. And they're doing everything they can to protect their golden boy that's been down there, CJ McCormick. And he's the guy that wants to have guys in women's sports in their bathrooms, in their restrooms, everywhere, you know. And the people, I think, pretty well went, no, we're not going that direction. And CJ came in second place, but that's not going to help him because Nellie picked up 44% of the vote. She's from Tuxuk, never lived in a place as big as Bethel except when she was a little kid. Total villager, and pretty much totally out of her element, if you ask me. But out here, if you're Yupik, you're going to get that vote. And I picked up 21% of the vote. That was of yesterday, and there's still more villages out there. But when it comes to the actual November election, I'm going to do nothing but pick up votes. I have so many friends that just go, we're not even bothering with the primaries. We'll wait for the real deal in November. But I think you can pretty well see where the wave happened out here, and the Democrats couldn't control their own party. Their golden boy is not going back to Juneau. Between Nellie and I, we have 65% of the vote. So for me, that's mission accomplished right there. It's the improbability of a conservative getting elected out here is astronomical.
Right.
And the best you can hope for is to eliminate your worst possible candidate. And as far as I'm concerned, that was CJ McCormick. And so whatever we end up with in Juneau, going from out here, it can't be worse. I mean, there's just no way it can be worse. So this is the one place that their jungle primary didn't help them. In the old days, right now, CJ would be off the ballot, and so would Minnesota. Both those would be off, and then it would just be down to Nellie and myself on the ballot, which that would be a real plus for me. Now I got to go convince people that they need to be writing the old conservative Gusick in to keep McCormick from going to help Nellie get down there. And that's going to be kind of different for me, having to go actually throw some support behind the Democrat, because I truly despise the Democrat Party and what they stand for. But other than that, that was just my 2 cents on it. And yeah, Nancy just needs to get out of the race. That's all. And for guys like Fat Ray, I would say, you're going to have to rank them both. You're just going to have to hold your nose. That's the same for everybody, whether you like it or not. If Nancy don't get out, hold your nose, rank Nick first, Nancy second, and the other guy third. And with that, we can probably still pull this off, Other than that, I'm done.
All right. Well, thank you, Willie. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I agree. This is the exception, not the rule. This is obviously where the Democrats couldn't come together. They normally do very well about not putting candidates up against each other. This is one example where that didn't play out. And I think it also speaks to how strongly people feel about CJ as a candidate in that regard as well. So thank you, Willie. Appreciate you coming on board. We got more coming up. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with one final segment right after these messages.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, let's continue on here. I got to get caught up in the chat room with a bunch of comments. I'm sorry, I had to ban a chatter from. I had to ban a chatter from Rumble. I don't know what was going on over there, but somebody was being naughty, so we got that fixed up. Kyle said, let me just start from where I'm right at. Kyle said the same people endorsing Nick now know Nancy and won't support her for governor. They know her too well. She knows this, so dangling support for the governor run ain't coming. She knows she's not going to make it in the thing. Terry says, unfortunately, people did not pay attention to the primary. I talked to multiple people about the primary, no clue. So yeah, so I think it was the lady from Kodiak earlier who was asking, did anybody else not know it was the primary day? I think, the primary is, again, underrated for most people. A lot of people just don't want to be bothered. Because remember, the vast majority of Alaskans are not a member of a party. And they haven't been for years. And the Republican primary was closed for a lot of years. I was never able to vote in a Republican primary because I'm not a member of the Republican Party. I'm undeclared. I'm a libertarian, but I'm not declared. I'm not a you know what I mean? I'm an undeclared candidate, so I wouldn't even get that ballot. So I think people have been taught to not care so much about the primary. So that might be an important part of that as well. David said Nancy will earn a lot of goodwill if she bows out, endorses Nick, and works to get Peltola out of office. A lot can be forgiven in politics when two sides agree to work together to defeat the Dems. Look at the presidential primaries, for example. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Jeremy says he thinks they all should step down if they don't get the most votes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Fat Ray says I'm guilty on that when I said, guilty of not seeing the future. Because again, that was kind of a back at you, not looking at the bigger picture. Nah, says Kim. I think it was more la, but you get the point. Let's see. Let me go back over here to see what else we got going in here. Let's see. There are more R's and D's in the state. Therefore, there will be more R candidates and the lone D can slip through, says Jim. I mean, that's been a problem for a long time, but it's not that big a difference. I mean, yes, it is more Republicans than Democrats, but not by a substantial amount. Again, this is more, I think, Jim, more of a philosophical thing. The Democrats are willing to more kumbaya and sacrifice for the greater good, right, than Republicans are. That's for sure. Jack says, is Harold going to drop out? No, he said it yesterday. I mean, his 5% that he took away from Kaufman would push Kaufman over the top, on that head-to-head race with Janice Park, but he said, nope, he's not dropping out. So I guess here's hoping that more people participate in the general than in the primary in that district. Because Harold, obviously, at just around 5%, he doesn't have any real path forward. But it's his right to stay in. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I would recommend he get out, but it's his deal. That's he's using it as a platform, and I think that's a great thing to do if you need to do it. Mike, the reality is this: when constituents and voters let you know they prefer someone else rather than act like you know better, have the respect and decency to respect what they are collectively telling you and focus on your other aspirations. Yeah. No, I'm with you 100% on that. Leela says, what good does it do to elect a Republican if once elected, they'd vote with the Democrats? This is the problem I have with Rank the Red. I will never vote for Princess Lisa. I will rank Nancy if she stays on the ballot, but ranked voting needs to go away because it forces me to vote for people I wouldn't ordinarily vote for or exhaust my ballot and render it useless. Again, I too would never vote for Lisa. I would vote for every other candidate on the ballot, including the Green Party and probably the Communist Party candidate, just to get Nancy, just to get Murkowski out if I could. David says he thinks that the general election will have a much higher conservative turnout with Trump and the ranked choice voting repeal on the ballot. I would agree with that. I think it's going to be interesting for sure. If Nick drops out, Mary wins. My political sense says Nancy is no match for her unless she's hiding a personality that I haven't seen yet. Ow. Vicious. All right. I'm still 15 minutes behind on the comments. I haven't got all caught up. So we'll try and do that here as we get close to the end of the show. And after we get done, I'll catch up with the comments. Here we go. Let's do it. Okay, one final segment here as we go through. Overall, I think the comments in the chat room have kind of come along to the lines of, it's going to be a better turnout for the general election. I agree. I think it's going to be a better turnout. How much better? Don't know. So we'll see what happens. Let's continue on here. We are taking phone calls this morning talking about whether or not candidates should drop out of races if they are not the top vote getters for their party, especially in where there are multiple candidates from the same party in the race, be they Democrats or Republicans. Let's see what you have to say. Joel is calling in this morning. Let's go over and see what Joel has to say. Good morning, my friend. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind today?
What's up, Mr. Dukes? I'm Joel Michael McKinney calling from District 16.
All right, my friend. What's on your mind?
Well, so when I ran for House District, I was just sick of the same person losing over and over again. And then, I realized I couldn't beat her, so I capitulated and joined her campaign, right? I think we both know who we're talking about.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, well, at least there's a good candidate for my district. Well, now that same exact person has scooted over. She decided she can't win in 16, so she scooted over to District 16 to battle it out with Mr. McKay. And I see the same thing happening, on the state level. And I'm just, I led by example is the way I see it. And everybody says, you say what you want to say, but I helped my team. I don't see why others don't take my example and use that and help their team so that we can win. And it's very frustrating because, I have personal relationships with each of these individuals and I love them. I love people in my party, but I am not above being just downright mean to these people if they don't do what's right for our state. You understand?
No, I totally understand what you're saying. This is the problem. I mean, look, Joel, this is the problem with the Republican Party, right? I mean, they don't hold each other to the same standards. They don't, they are continually circling the wagons and shooting each other. You're right. You pulled out, threw your support behind Liz and everything. And yet when the going gets tough and they realize, oh, we can't make it, then we're going to start throwing, we're going to jump ship and go somewhere else. That shows me one thing. That shows me that they're really not in it necessarily for the they're not in it for the good of the state, that it's more about them, right? It's more about the power or the prestige or whatever it is. And if it's not helping, then get out. If it's not helping and you have no shot, then get out and throw your support behind the candidate that has the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, well, I endorsed Nick Begich early. I saw what happened last cycle where, the lovely and honorable Sarah Palin went gallivanting around with Mr. Trump, and that's fine and dandy, but Nick stayed home and did the actual work. He attended the events. I've never seen a candidate more attentive to Alaska than Nick Begich. And I understand he's not perfect. He has a couple of business deals. He has a couple of family ties, blah, blah, blah. I get it. He's not perfect. But if you look at him and you look at his competition, the warden, the choice is clear, in my opinion.
No, I mean,
thank you for having me on the show, Mr.
Yeah,
Duke.
no, I appreciate it. Thank you, Joel.
Great show as always.
Appreciate it. Thank you for calling in. And I agree. I mean, it's very obvious to anybody who's looking closely that Nick has done the work. And what has Nancy done? She's appeared on a handful of things. She's not really putting a position out there. She obviously was brought in by the powers that be because, later into the game, because they didn't like the fact that Nick was garnering such support. He already had the endorsement of 3 or 4 districts by the time she got into the race, and look at it now. I mean, he's got the endorsement of all these different clubs, and the only one that he doesn't is the one that she's a part of, the district that she's a part of, and they haven't endorsed her. So, again, you're right. He's done the work. And that's why I think people are supporting him more than anything else, is because he's done the work. And I would hope that she would do the right thing. But again, based on her comment on Facebook yesterday, I don't think that's going to happen. I think she's going to stick in it unless her handlers at the RNCC pull the full plug and say, you're done. Don't do it. But maybe they'd rather have Mary in there than Nick, because Nick is a disruptor. Nick is not a yes man. Nick is not going to be the guy that's going to go in there and say, yes, sir, 2 bags full, sir. Or is it yes, sir, no, sir, 2 bags full, sir? He's not going to be the yes man. And so maybe they'd rather have Mary in that position than they would Nick. But maybe they will pull the plug and pull the money and pull the funding and support from Nancy, or choke that off. I don't know. But let's just assume that it doesn't happen. Let's assume that she's in the race. That means one thing. It means that we need to focus on ranking the red. And yes, I know Ray in the chat room was like, why does she deserve a second chance? Why does she deserve I shouldn't. If we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. No, I don't like ranked choice, but I will use it if it's what's presented to me. I will use it to my advantage. I was joking the other day about the presidential primary, whereas before, if it was the regular election, I may have voted for somebody like Trump, who I do not like at all, but I like at least a little bit better than Kamala Harris. I might have been forced to do that. Because of ranked choice voting, now I can vote for the candidate of my choice and rank Trump down in the 3rd position or 4th position, whatever. I could vote that. I'm not going to vote for Harris, but I could vote for Chase Oliver. I could vote for RFK Jr. I could vote for anybody and then still have my vote count for Trump if it has to. Oh, God, that's just so painful to think about. I will hold my nose and do it, as Joel said. That is what makes sense. That is what makes sense. And yes, people are just not paying attention. People are not paying attention to what's going on. I mean, we've had several people in the chat room say today, and in fact, one young lady, I don't know if she's young or old, said, was anybody else caught unawares that the primary was on Tuesday? I mean, if you were listening to this show, you knew. But how many people are just not paying attention? And like I said, because of the way the primaries ran in this state for years, maybe people just didn't care. They're just waiting for the general so they can pick from whoever the choices are when it's done. Because unless you were a Republican, you could. And there's more independents in this state than party members. So again, I'm not going to worry too much about it. All right, we got to go. We will see you tomorrow. Oh, it's Firearms Friday tomorrow. I forgot to mention it earlier. Eric Pratt from Gun Owners of America is going to be joining us in hour 1 tomorrow. Oh, yeah. Going to be fun. Come and join us then. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will see you then. Be kind, love one another, live well. Okay, I did. You scrolled too far. You're right. And Kyle did correct me. The Republican primary was never closed, only to register Dems, AIP, and Green. He is right. Although I don't think I ended up ever voting in the Republican primary. I don't know. I don't recall. Anyway, thank you, Kyle, for straightening me out on that. Somebody, Elijah Verhagen's in the chat room. Somebody might finally beat Kawasaki. He might have to finally get a real job. Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. Still lots of room in there. It's only a couple of percentage points, but the fact that she went up against an 18-year incumbent, 18 years. Guy hasn't had a real job in 18 years. Yeah, that's a good thing. We'll see what's going on there. I saw Ben posted up his support. If you want to help support Ben Carpenter for Alaska.com. That's good stuff there. Elijah also said Kronk must be sweating in District R, but hey, he can pull it off. Yeah, I mean, it's a close race, but again, maybe if some of the other people were pulling out and giving their support, swinging their support behind Kronk, might be able to get that done again. Ron said, I had people call me and ask if there was an election. I'm just going to shake my head at this point. I'm just going to sigh and shake my head. Let's see. Kyle says Rep Carpenter came in second among ours. Do you all think he should drop out and support Bjorkman? I mean, no. Like I said, I don't think that it applies in every race. I said that earlier on. In some races, it does. But especially since Bjorkman arguably is not, he may have an R next to his name, but he's not. I think that's why I said earlier, I think it should be more about whether not the party label, but the conservative or smaller government versus bigger government, whatever label you want to put on it. I think that should be a thing. It's not the exact same as Dahlstrom. He said he had then added to say it's exactly the same as Dahlstrom. No, Dahlstrom, we're talking about two completely different parties in that regard, versus in this case, the Republican is going to win one way or the other. So I think that's going to be what's going on there. I'm still scrolling. Nancy has no choice. I'm going through here. Chris says, I believe RFK is endorsing Trump. I think that might actually be happening today. There was an article. Apparently RFK is going to be giving a speech in Phoenix on Friday, and about the present historical moment and his path forward. Part of the problem is that he was doing very well when it was Biden and Trump. He was doing very well, but now that Harris has come on board, his campaign is kind of stalled a little bit, and he's facing challenges in New York to be on the ballot and some other things. So it's his path forward is unclear. Although his message has been very well received, and I think on a lot of issues he has some good ideas. There's some issues that he's nuts on, but again, I agree with you. I think that he probably is going to announce that he is going to endorse Trump here shortly. Elijah said, I feel you about holding your nose and voting for Trump, but his policies are so much better than Kamala. Again, it's the choice of the diarrhea milkshake or the poop sandwich. Which would you rather have? They're still horrible, but which one can you choke down faster? I'm just scrolling through here. The real race begins. Got to stock up in Folgers. Okay. And an RFK endorsement means zilch, says Harold. I'm going to disagree with that. I'll be honest with you. I will disagree with that. I think that an RFK endorsement of Trump will mean something. Maybe not as much as, even not as much as it. And that's one way to get people to support you, Harold, is to tell people that they're ignorant and they don't even know policies. You folks don't even know the policies. That's one way to convince people, is to tell them they're ignorant. I mean, there's this book out there called How to Win Friends and Influence People. You may want to pick up a copy. You may want to pick up your copy. I'm not saying RFK is not a kingmaker or is a kingmaker. I'm just saying the endorsement, it would have some effect. I don't know if it's a winning effect, but it would be some effect. It doesn't mean zilch. It doesn't mean zero. It's a non-zero effect, but, I'm not saying it would be huge, but even if a fraction of RFK's supporters swung the other way, it could make a difference in some areas because he's got a lot of support for that. So just saying. I'm not a blind MAGA. Does that insinuate that I am? Have you been listening, or you just listening to the sound of your own voice because that's what you love? I'm just not sure. I'm not a blind MAGA either, but sometimes you got to hold your nose and do the things you do. All right. We got more tomorrow. Eric Pratt, Gun Owners of America, will be joining us. In the meanwhile, you guys out there and do good work. Don't grow weary in well-doing. Don't do it. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will see you guys tomorrow. The Michael Duke Show.
shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.